Hello everyone, I'm Sahid. Thank you for clicking this video. I'm very happy that you're here. Today we will be continuing our chapter series on this Canadian literature book that I've been reading called Moon of the Crusted Snow by waubgeshig. Today I'm going to be reading chapter 30. And like my other chapter series videos, I like to give a brief intro slash summary about the book before I start. So, this book is about a small anishinaabe community that's located within the northern region of Canada. This is a small indigenous slash native community that's among one of the First Nations of indigenous groups in Canada. And in this community, they're very strong on hunting, fishing, giving back, gathering. It's the way of living on the land. It's their sense of tradition slash customs. It's their community. It's sort of sense of community, and all these things, fishing, hunting, are very important to their sense of identity and their language. The rituals that they do and that have been preserved throughout through generations and centuries, as we read in this book, it's important to highlight on, and they have been resilient throughout with early colonizations um, by white settlers and Europeans who tried to take their land from them. They resisted against that, and they continue to resist today, even within this community. Um, they're currently facing an obstacle, and the obstacle is that they're experiencing a power crisis, which many young people are seeing it as an apocalypse, and it truly is an apocalypse because this unfortunate circumstance has forced them to make sudden changes in their life, and human motives, attitudes, and emotions changed drastically throughout this book, and it's really sad. It started with them losing electricity, to losing access to watching TV. They don't have communication with the outside world, and it's all these things happened one after the other and just kept getting worse. And earlier in my chapter series, I was wondering, was it ever going to get resolved? Is it going to get better? And how are leaders trying to sort of make a solution or help out? And throughout this book, we see that unfortunately it didn't get better. It's only seemed to have gotten worse. People started dying of starvation slash hunger. Their community started to deal with food insecurity. Certain people committed suicide. Certain people died due to unknown circumstances. We have outsiders who, and that's one thing, sorry, I forgot to mention. It's not only happened within their community. Within this book, we read that, in certain communities that are nearby, such as Gibson, Everson Mills, um, these communities have gotten to the point in which things have escalated, um, immensely, and it's gotten to the point people are engaging in violence and stuff. So that's what we read about early on, and we see that within these few closing chapters, as we know that this book is about to come to an end. There's only one chapter left. Um, Plus, I think there's an additional part which is not exactly a chapter, but it's additional to give. Sorry, excuse me, to give a brief more information about how this story sort of ends. But like I was saying, this book, um, excuse me, I lost my train of thought, but this book sort of emphasizes on how things just didn't seem to get better, um, and community leaders have gotten to the point which they're sort of helpless in a way. We have outsiders like one of the main ones, Justin Scott, who was one of the first outsiders to come. He sort of threatening, community leaders like Terry Megas that he knows what's going on, and he, he knows that the food is running out and people are gonna find out. It's gonna go into a crisis like it did in this community, and things like that really is unfortunate to read about, because we know that these people obviously let this man in hoping he was going to bring some good excuse me, some good into the community. But we see from just not only what we read recently about what he did after the food brawl that happened at the band council, but we see that through his previous actions that he's not a person that could be trusted. He's a person which many people are feeling very worried about, and not to mention his identity is a huge part of that as well. He's an outsider who's very unusual to the community. He's a white man who happens to be in a small indigenous community. People are feeling a lot of ways about that, and people don't trust him. And he not only shows to me as a reader why exactly people shouldn't trust him. He's done several things and said several things I hate deeply and I wouldn't like in my community. And so I understand why people feel certain ways about him. And then recently in the last chapter we have when Even and I believe Tyler were, doing um what they do for people who have passed on. They have a morgue in which they are sort of keeping people's body because um, I think this is something I should have also mentioned. In this book, they're, experiencing a really horrible season. It's literally, they're at the peak of winter right now. And they can't bury people who are dying due to these unfortunate circumstances that they're in, and so they have to sort of keep their body preserved in a morgue. And they have several bodies. We read that about 23 bodies have been buried, but recently in the last chapter we read that one has gone missing. Um, one has gone missing, and they believe it's one of the new outsiders, Justin Scott, who is the one who committed this crime. And so, Even is taking initiative. We read that Even wants to go without telling the other community leaders about what he is, this sort of theory, or not exactly theory, but this belief that he has about him committing such, crime. And so in chapter 30, we're going to read about hopefully what possibly, you know, Even and Tyler, if I don't know if it's Tyler or Isaiah, excuse me, but I believe it's Tyler. What they do when they finally go to Scott's house. So yeah, we're gonna read about that in chapter 30. Okay. Chapter 30. The smell of wood burning reached them as they approached the row of duplexes. The snow swelled through their snowshoes with each step. Even was focused on the patterns his snowshoes made. Anything not to think about what lay ahead. Whatever you do, he said to Isaiah and Tyler, who had come with him, keep your gun on your shoulder. Don't walk in pointing it at him. He's a shoot first kind of guy. He's a fucking psycho, said Isaiah. We don't know how fast he can draw a gun. As long as there isn't one in his hands, we'll be one step ahead. God damn it, Isaiah sighed and turned his head away. Tyler glanced at Even, whose gaze went cold. Even cocked his head toward the duplex that Scott and his cronies occupied. See that smoke? It looks like there's a fire out back. Shit, yeah. They must be working on something back there, said Isaiah. Alright, well, let's just go around and make like we just want to talk, said Even. Isn't that what we want to do? Asked Isaiah. His voice cracked at the end of his question. Yeah, it is. The plan was to confront Scott about the missing body. When they had found Isaiah at his house to tell him, he hadn't needed much convincing and had agreed with Even. So Tyler had come along reluctantly. Over the course of this terrible winter, they had become an unbreakable alliance. Anxiety hummed in Evan's ears as he walked towards the house. Isaiah followed, watching for an ambush. In the rear, Tyler scanned the windows of the building for any sign of people who lived there. There was no activity. They walked around the corner of the building, and the smell of smoke grew stronger. Their hearts beat faster as they neared the back. They didn't feel the freezing temperature stinging their bare hands, cracked and calloused after the long winter. Even heard the fire crackle as he rounded the duplex and entered the backyard, which was sheltered by green pine and spruce trees. 3 snowmobiles were parked along the back wall of the building. Scott, Brad Connor, and Alex Richer stood around a large fire pit made from an old oil drum. A large black pot rested on top of the rusty makeshift grill. Scott's back was to them, but Connor stiffened and Richer raised an eyebrow as he saw the 3 men approach. Scott continued to stare into the fire without turning around. "Is that my buddy Even?" he said, almost axing the flames themselves. "How you doing, Justin?" Even responded, knowing any hesitation would reveal nervousness. He called him by his first name in an attempt to play a deceptive friendly hand. Even couldn't, excuse me, Scott wore only a grey hooded sweatshirt and faded jeans. Even couldn't see a gun on or near him. To the left, Richer also appeared unarmed in a blue plaid jack shirt. To the right of Scott, Connor stood expressionless. Even didn't notice a gun on him either, but both men could have them concealed under their bulky jackets. "I'm good, thanks, friend," Scott replied, slowly turning around. His hands were tucked in the pouch of his hoodie. Scott studied the 3 of them, with a smirk. He noticed the guns over their shoulders. "You boys out hunting or something?" Even smiled faintly and shrugged. "We haven't gotten anything. We must be getting rusty. Good thing we showed up. You guys would have been wasting away up here by now." Boys?" Scott cocked his head back to the men behind him, who said nothing. "White man always saves the day," he erupted in boisterous laughter, keeping his eyes trained on the 3 Anishinaabe men in front of him. Without missing a beat, he abruptly stopped laughing and spoke again, this time calmly and seriously. "All right, enough bullshit. What do you want?" "We gotta ask you about something." "Go on." "Were you down at the garage lately?" Even kept his voice steady and low. "What garage?" "The one down by the band office, on the other side of the building where you used to stay." "Oh, the morgue?" The word stung. Evan's rifle felt heavy on his shoulder. He noticed he was gritting his teeth. He was starting to lose his cool, and he knew it. "What the hell would I want down there?" Scott shot back without taking his hands out of the front pocket of his sweatshirt. Isaiah kept his eyes on Scott's concealed fist. That day you were at the handout, you said something about knowing what to eat when the food runs out. Is that what you meant? Oh, come on now, Eve. Why would I say something like that? I heard you. I was probably just joking. I know how you people have all kinds of ceremonies and voodoo and shit about your dead. Even felt the blood rush into his face. What's in that spot? Scott kept his boot planted in the snow and lowered his voice. That? That's just a little experiment. Don't worry about it. It looks like you're boiling something. Tyler breathed in, trying to smell what was in the pot, but all he could sense was the wood smoke. Scott lowered his chin, and his eyes hardened. Even Scott fluttered. Do you boys remember when I came here? Said Scott. The pair behind him squared up to face them as Scott continued. I came here by myself. I survived for days out in the bush after everything in the city went to shit. And it was easy for me. I could have been out there for weeks. No problem. When I got here, you people barely had your shit together. There was no plan. People were going hungry already. And your solution? Give them handouts. Now those are running out. And there'll be goddamn chaos here soon. If some of these freeloaders even survive this winter, Scott's voice rose and his eyes grew wide. Most of them don't even know how to trap. When I took some of those kids out there, they didn't know what the fuck they were doing. If that's your future, then... Huh? He shook his head. Even exhaled forcefully and let his own shoulders settle, as if he were about to squeeze a trigger with a moose in sight. We were okay without you, and we'll be okay without you. We've been up here longer than you've been. Scott squinted. Is that a threat, Eve? We don't need you, Scott. Bullshit. We know this land. I doubt that. Maybe you guys do, not the rest of the deadbeats here. It's in all of them. They know it. Don't get all Indian on me now. Even softened his tone and bared his palm in Scott's direction. Why did you come here anyway? Doesn't matter. I'm here now. What are you running from? Your boy saw what was happening down there. Why did you think it'd be better here? The door at the back porch clicked and creaked open, and Cam emerged from inside. As he closed the door behind him and came into plain sight, even noticed his little brother's bare arms and the front of his overalls covered in blood. Cam's gaze was locked on the fire pit. Even felt his stomach drop. Cam! He blurted, his voice cracking. Cam looked at his brother and his friend standing off against the white man. His eyes cleared as he recognized the familiar faces, almost as if he were emerging from a deep spell. He looked down his bloody hands and began to sob. What in the holy fuck is going on here? Shouted Isaiah. Even shook off the sickening feeling in his gut and asked Scott outright, Did you steal a body? Scott rolled his eyes. Fuck's sakes, man. Who cares? We care. Those are our relatives. It doesn't matter if I did. This is a matter of survival, boys. Even felt Tyler tense behind him. You're a fucking murderer and a fucking cannibal. Tyler shouted. He made to move towards Cam, who stood frozen, but even held out his arm to stop him. All right, everyone, calm the fuck down. Even fought to regain control of the situation. Let's just have a look at what's on the fire there, Scott. He took a step towards the pot. Scott pulled a pistol from the sweatshirt's pouch and pointed it at Even. Now, you just hold up there, boy, he ordered. Even stopped walking and slowly raised his hands, and Tyler and Isaiah unshouldered their guns. You both calm the fuck down, too. Scott waved the barrel at them. You have seen me use this. All of you, chill out, said Even as he raised his open palms. Let's just take a step back. Scott fired 3 shots and Even crumbled to the ground. As Scott turned to fire on Tyler and Isaiah, his head burst open above his left eye in a spray of blood, bone, and brain. He fell forward. Megan Connor stood on the back porch with the rifle sight up to her eye. Cam cowered on the wooden deck beside her, her light brown hair draped over her shoulder and the butt of the gun. Her body heaved with shock. Scott lay face down, motionless, as blood leaked from his head into the snow, spreading crimson across the white. Even grunted and Tyler scrambled to help him. Isaiah fixed his gun on the other 2 men, who put their hands up in surrender. He looked to Megan on the porch, still holding her rifle. She nodded and trained her gun on her husband and his friend, who froze in place. She muttered something to Cam, who remained crouched, crying into his bloody hands. Isaiah turned his gaze back to the other men, and he knew there was nothing left to fear. Richard and Brad Connor were defeated without Scott. They were now outnumbered and outgunned. They would likely be banished from the territory for the part they played, but that was the community's decision. The water in the pot continued to bubble as the fire crackled beneath it. Isaiah took a few cautious steps towards it to look inside. And that is the end of chapter 30. Oh gosh. That was dark. Oh wow. So earlier in the introduction I mentioned how Even came to this sort of belief that Justin Scott was the one who stole the body. And after reading this chapter, we noticed that, yes, his belief was in fact true. And it's sad, even reading the fact that this was actually what's going on. And he's basically sort of admitted to the fact that he was doing that. And with the evidence and the people, the suspicious activities with Cam sort of walking in with, blood covered in, his hands and his overalls, was just quite disappointing. Not only because of, a part of me wanting to see if Justin Scott was different, even though deep down I knew that he just couldn't be trusted. And we see more clearly now that, yeah, he absolutely shouldn't have been in this community and he should have never been let in. But, anyways, we're not going to ponder on the fact that he should have never been in this community. But I want to highlight on the fact that, first of all, let's talk about Even's leadership on, taking initiative to do, I guess, this sort of investigation with Isaiah and Tyler. him sort of, taking a leadership role to say, we're not going to keep sticking around and waiting to talk to the other, community leaders or upper community leaders. We as, maintenance staff, and we as a member of the band council also need to take initiative, especially during these horrible times, and knowing that certain people like Justin Scott, who for so long since, literally when he came to the community, you've not trusted, you can't keep letting things just keep happening. You have to take action. And so I admire the fact that, not only Even, but the other guys, Isaiah and Tyler, took action to investigate this and to, be courageous enough to even go to these people's house. Because, obviously, we read that Justin Scott is not, just some guy you could just go up to. He's crazy. We've seen him shoot people out of, out of the blue. And so, what's to say that he's not going to do that when, Even and the guys show up? And he did do that. He, shot at Even. But thankfully, when I read, I was like, oh my god, that Even going to die? But thankfully, Even did not die. But he basically shot at Even. And then, as a result of that, let's talk about Megan Connor come in and sort of shooting him. Oh my gosh, I did not expect that. But I think, I hate to say this and I hate to sound that way. It was deserved, especially during that period, what he did, what he said prior to that, and then when he shot not only once, but 3 times at Even, that was deserved. We welcome you to this community and this is what you do to us. No, you're going to have to, unfortunately, I hate that I'm saying this, but you have to, yeah, because I don't want to say that word because I don't know how, YouTube works, but, I don't want them to ban me. So, anyways, yeah, Megan Connor took action right there, and I honestly admire that because I did not like Justin Scott from the beginning, if I'm being real. And what he, got was deserved. And the other guys who were with him, they better be banned, bro. Because we just read that it will be the community decision to, sort of remove them from the territory. And I really hope before I read this next chapter, they are banned from the community. Because what the heck? And they were nothing without Justin Scott. So, the other guys just had no fear. But that this chapter was dark, and I think we're seeing more action now. And that's what I've been waiting for, to see action within this book. And it's kind of unfortunate that we're just not seeing the action, but I'm glad that we're seeing action. But yeah, that's the summary of chapter 30. If you enjoyed this video, please kindly subscribe, like, and comment. Thank you. Bye.